This regular meeting of the Board of Education is called to order. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mrs. Click,
Here.
Mr. Sobolski,
Here.
Mrs. Mahalis,
Here.
and Mr. Acom and Mrs. Schneider are absent.
All right, we have no special reports or recognitions tonight, so we will move on to hearing of the public. We have one person who signed up to speak. The public comment period is limited to 30 minutes. Each speaker will be limited to a total time of 3 minutes. The treasurer will keep the time. Each person addressing the board is asked to give his or her name and address. Upon being recognized by the chair, and the treasurer will include that information in the board meeting minutes, and specific questions should be directed to board members and administration outside of the meeting. So, Scanti, you're up.
Deb Conti, 234 South Chillicothe Road. I have some questions about the proposed project that is being voted on, the expansion with the new high school. And one of my questions was from looking at, and I've only looked a little bit, it appeared that the academic part of the high school is going to be 3 stories, but that requires a variance. So if a variance isn't had, won't that affect the price of the finished product of where you would put those classrooms? Second thing is if traffic studies, we already know what it's like to be out here without another building. I was wondering if the traffic studies have been done. The big question I have is water mitigation, if those studies have been done. At 234 South Chillicothe Road, I have the wonderful thing of having 7 openings for stormwater. The water from West Pioneer Trail and Aurora Hudson Road, from behind all the properties, comes through my 1/4 lot to front of the street. So I would like to know if you're going to add more water to me, because I've already had a lot of problems, and the city has done the best they can with adding different things. The other thing is because I go to Console a lot, and I'm always looking at topography and water issues. Walden, which just currently went through a huge process of being able to expand at the front of Walden, I found out their water comes down here from the high school, from this area where we're at right now, goes down through the woods, and that's the reason why they have so much excess water. It's coming from the top and going down, because this is the top right here where we are currently standing. So I'm sure they're going to want to know what kind of water is going to be added to the woods as well as into Walden, because they made changes to retention basins for what they're going to build, but that was not based before this proposed construction. So I'm very interested in the topography and the water and where it's going to go. If there were any kind of retention basins or detention basins, I didn't see them in your drawings, and I apologize, but I will be looking again and looking for that information, because those are very, very important. Also, I want to make sure that I have this right, that this levy is for 37 years. So this is something that's going to be paid for by children and grandchildren, not just the people voting on it when it gets to the electorate. The last question I have is because I'm so active with going to council on that and planning in their meetings, usually anything that's on the agenda is posted. And I went looking for your exhibits, and I realized they haven't been voted on yet, but I do like to read a lot of times the exhibits that you're putting forth ahead of time. So I was just wondering if the exhibits could be added, so when you look up the agenda, you could see the proposed exhibits that you're going to be discussing for the night. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And someone will get back to you. Okay, thank you. All right, and that was all for that. Next, we will move on to the approval of minutes from our special meeting of May 18th and the regular meeting of May 20th. We'll take them together without objection. May I have a motion, please?
Second.
Are there any comments or edits, additions to those minutes? Nope. Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mr. Cebulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Click?
Yes.
And Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes. Minutes are approved as written. As is typical in June and July, we will not have a superintendent's report or assistant superintendent's report, and we'll move right on to the treasurer's report.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Mahalis. And this evening, I have 4 different resolutions for your consideration. And we'll start off with the first one, which is Exhibit D1, which are the financial statements and reports for the month of May. And in May, our expenditures exceeded revenues by about $3.2 million, decreasing our general fund cash balance to about $17.3 million, 11 months into the fiscal year. Revenues were about 15.75% greater than projected, and expenditures about 2.25% greater. On the revenue side, the balance of the first half 2023 real property taxes totaling $930,386, along with the public utility tangible personal property receipts, $41,341 were received from the Summit County fiscal officer. So with the receipt of these taxes, we've received all of our local property taxes for fiscal year '24, totaling a little over $36 million. And this is about $3.3 million of an increase over last year, mainly as a result of the passage of the 5.9 mil levy that was passed back in November of '23. On the expenditure side, May was a 3-pay month, so you can see that our personnel services costs are, higher than normal, 3 pays versus 2. We have 2 of those every year, as it's 26 pays, so 2 months will be a 3-pay month. On the purchase services side, we had a $49,000 payment to the Chagrin Falls Board of Education for vocational education tuition. They host the performing arts program there, and we have several students of ours that do attend there this year. And supplies and material costs are about $155,000 greater than projected. This is for the year, and largely as a result of the supplies for operation and repair of the buildings are about $110,000 greater than last year. Mainly, rising inflation and rising of costs for the different items that are used for the repairs. So thus far for the fiscal year, our revenues are about $189,000 greater than projected, expenditures $232 greater. So we have an unfavorable variance of about $42,000, 11 months into the fiscal year. So it's relatively close to projection, considering we have a $40-some million budget. So.
Right.
And that is the financial report for May.
Okay. Thank you. So Exhibit D1 is a resolution to approve financial statements and reports. May I have a motion, please?
Moved.
Chair seconds. Any comments or questions for Mr. Volleson? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes.
Mrs. Click?
Yes.
And Mr. Cebulski.
Yes.
D2 is the second resolution, and this is a resolution to approve our 2023 final appropriations. And as you can see in your packet, our overall appropriations for the year. Pull them out here. General fund total appropriations is going to be $47.9 million. Overall for the district, $58.3 million total appropriations. Higher than really what we're going to see in the upcoming future, because this is the last year of the ESSER dollars. And so that added a significant amount to our overall appropriations. So you can see there's, in and out. Some of them are being reduced, some of them are increasing. The total expenditures will be less than the appropriations, as the appropriations do cover any purchase orders which had not been processed and items like that. So overall, our expenditures will be less than this, but we have to have the appropriations, obviously, to cover purchase orders, anything that's been encumbered. And also, this does include the estimate for the final payroll of the year, which will be coming this Friday. So there'll be payroll and benefits associated with that. And that is Exhibit D2.
All right, a resolution to approve 2023 to 2024 final appropriations. Chair moves.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mrs. Click?
Yes.
Mr. Cebulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes.
We'll move on to Exhibit D3, and these are the permanent appropriations for fiscal year '25. So these will allow us to begin the school year July 1. The general fund appropriations tie into the five-year forecast. So I kind of just rounded it up a little bit, but it's about it is $50 million of what our general fund appropriations will be. All the other appropriations pretty much run in line with what we've received and expended in previous years. So that all kind of ties to those particular figures. We'll have some of the bigger ones. Our IDEA, our Special Education Fund, is about $670,000, and that is federal programming. That's Fund 516. Then obviously we still have our bond retirement for the '08 bonds and permanent improvement, food service, so on and so forth. But the total appropriations at $56,660,000 for fiscal year '25.
Okay. Exhibit D3, resolution to approve 2024-2025 permanent appropriations. May I have a motion?
Moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mrs. Click?
Yes.
Mr. Cebulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes.
And the final resolution is Resolution D4, and these are appropriation amendments. These are transfers and advances between funds, which we always do in June. You can see on the transfer end, we are transferring $40,000 to athletics. That is typical of what we've done to help the athletic program. Permanent improvement, you could see a $30,000 transfer, so it's within the permanent improvement fund, and we've been doing this for multiple years. This actually goes towards the stadium, so when turf is needed in the future, we've been doing about $30,000 a year to cover the cost of that after it runs through its 10 or 11-year life. Some of the others are smaller ones, just moving around things. Athletic camps, there was additional camp money that Mr. Powers had that we're splitting off into the individual sports, and you could see where all that's moving between whatever the particular sport may be. The advances on the backside, those will all be paid back to the general fund. Your 500 funds, which are your federal programs, we're awaiting monies from the state, which we'll receive probably in July. So that'll cover all of those. And you can see some of the other ones are a lot smaller amount. Food service, we have an initial one of $25,000. That kind of covers us as we finish off the year with payroll and before the food service dollars start coming in when school starts in August.
All right, may I have a motion, please, for Exhibit D4, a resolution to approve appropriation amendments?
Second.
I had a question. Why are we advancing money to the class of 2023? I mean, it's only $200, but I was interested.
Well, at the moment, they are $200 in the hole.
Oh.
So,
Okay.
so what'll happen eventually is it'll probably get paid through the 018 account at the high school, since I'm sure the class of 2023 isn't coming back to raise $200.
Right.
So once school comes into being, we'll have transfer from the 018 account of the principal to cover the class of 23's debt of $200.
All right, any other questions? All right, please call the roll.
Mrs. Click,
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis,
Yes.
and Mr. Cebulski.
Yes.
Great, all of those resolutions are approved.
And that concludes my report.
All right, thank you. Moving on to new business, we have Exhibit E1A, which is a resolution to accept gifts and contributions. May I have a motion, please, and then I'll read through them.
Moved.
Chair seconds. We have the Charities Aid Foundation donating $524 to the boys tennis program, Alfred Beckstrom donated a 3D printer to Harmon valued at $300, and the Aurora Sports Boosters donated $55,000. So we thank them. Any other comments? All right, Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mrs. Click?
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes.
Mr. Sobowski?
Yes.
All right, resolution is approved. Tonight, we have 7 personnel issues. I will read through them, and we'll take them as a group, if that's okay. We have Exhibit E1B1, a resolution to accept resignations. Exhibit E1B2 is a resolution to approve the introductory appointment of support staff at Miller. Exhibit E1B3 is a resolution to award supplemental contracts to district personnel. Exhibit E1B4 is a resolution to employ specialists for next school year. Exhibit E1B5 is a resolution to award teachers a 1-year limited contract. Exhibit E1B6 is a resolution to approve a revised job description for gifted interventionist and coordinator. And Exhibit E1B7 is a resolution to approve a revised substitute pay rates. Well, several of those, several revised substitute pay rates. May I have a motion, please?
Second?
Are there any comments or questions about those? I did ask Mr. Roberto what was different about the job description for the gifted interventionist, and he said?
So, we had not replaced that position for over a decade, a couple decades actually. And in doing that, the job description was very thin and really didn't match with what was reported. So it was basically rewritten. Paul sat down with Shannon Daigle, who is on her way out, and we wrote that description so that it's, the majority of it is administrative, but there's about a 70-30 split with some teaching duties as well.
Okay. So we'll vote on this, and then Dr. Milstich, would you introduce the ladies who
Sure.
are here? All right, Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes.
Mrs. Click?
Yes.
Mr. Sobowski?
Yes.
All right, those resolutions are approved.
Okay, yep, thank you for the opportunity to introduce 2 of our 5 new teaching staff that are here tonight. So we'll start with Becky Quinn right there. She can raise her hand. Becky actually has extensive administrative experience starting down in South Carolina, and then spent some time in Cleveland Heights, Willoughby, Eastlake, and most recently Chagrin Falls, with a background in curriculum and gifted services. And so we're really happy that she did decide that the grass is greener on the other side when it comes to Greenman Nation, and she has decided to come join us as a gifted interventionist and coordinator here in the Aurora City Schools. So welcome to Becky Quinn. Did you want to say anything before I introduce Lisa?
Great, thanks.
And then behind her, we have Lisa McLean, who also has extensive experience as a guidance counselor, school counselor, middle school counselor in Independence, and has also decided to relocate and come to Aurora, and is going to be one of our new counselors. We have multiple new counselors in the district this upcoming year, but will be one of our new Harmon counselors. So we're extremely excited to welcome Lisa to Greenman Nation as well. So, Lisa?
Great, thanks. Is that your little boy? Hi, Ryan.
He had a good snack.
Yeah. Came at a good time, Ryan.
Well, welcome to both of you, and thanks for coming tonight so we could meet you. All right, moving on. Exhibit E1C is a resolution to waive career technical training for students in grades 7 and 8 during the 24-25 school year. May I have a motion, please?
Moved?
Chair seconds. Could you tell us about this?
Yeah, so each year, the City of Ohio provides this opportunity to have this waiver occur because we provide our technical career education at the high school through Excel Tech program from there. So we do have opportunities for the kids to learn about some things. For example, the 7th grade held a career fair and things like that. But in terms of the actual curriculum, that'll come at the high school level.
All right. Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mrs. Click?
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes.
Mr. Sobowski?
Yes.
Resolution is approved. Exhibit E1D is a resolution to approve the renewal of our food service contract. May I have a motion, please?
Second?
Any comments or questions? Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mrs. Click?
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes.
Mr. Sobowski?
Yes.
And we thank you. I know we have two ladies in the audience from the company, right? So thank you for coming, and thank you for your service to the district. And then lastly, we have Exhibit E1E is a resolution to approve changes to the high school handbook. May I have a motion, please?
Second?
Okay, I have a couple questions. Anybody want to go first, other than me? Cell phones, number 13. We're going to ask students to put them in a bin on the way into the classroom?
Yes, so the state of Ohio has the requirement that we are to, by the end of next year, have a cell phone policy. We'll be working on that this summer. But one of the things that the high school is going to do, which they actually, many teachers have done, but they're going to do it across the board, is there's a little pocket by the door, entrance to the door. They're kind of numbered. And it's like a shoe holder, basically. And you basically take your cell phone out, slip it into the pocket, go sit down, and on your way out, you grab your cell phone, and then you're off on your way. So we're not requiring the students to keep them in the locker at the high school, as all the other buildings have, but they are asked to keep them separate. And if they are needed for something, then the kids can grab them and that sort of thing for, class. But with
Yeah.
Chromebooks, not as much of a need.
Right. So at Harmon, they leave them in their locker?
They
don't
are
let us get them out?
supposed to leave them in their locker, yes. And they do a pretty good job with it, yeah.
Okay, well, I think it's great, but I'll be surprised if it works. I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
Think it's gonna work?
With the honestly, when I was a high school principal, we instituted this 5, 6, 7, I don't know, 8 years ago. So that's not new. I guess we didn't put it in the policy. Yeah, I mean, they just get used to it. They go in
They
the
just
class and
put
plop it down. And do all of them do it? No, some of them have it off and away. But if it becomes an issue in class, then the teacher's
Yeah.
more likely to take it and give it to the assistant principal. So it's a motivation to leave it off and away or just use the pocket holders.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Hats. I saw that the way it reads is now students will be allowed to wear hats. Somebody's going to determine if they're distracting or not. That is on the last page.
Yeah, I think the idea behind that is that there are different, over the years, this policy has evolved, and in my case, would be able to articulate it better, but they've gotten to the point where head covers, whether it's a hat, a cap, a scarf, or something like that, has not been as much of a distraction. The reason why it could be is if, somebody grabs it, takes it, maybe the hat's saying something that's not appropriate, that sort of thing. But we do have had kids, wear hats in the building more often in the last couple of years, and so this is an adjustment for that.
So we allow that, like baseball caps and hoodies and stuff like that?
Yeah,
That's-
again, it's not the norm, but it's not something that they've kind of chosen their battles over the years.
Okay. And then I read about AI. Is this the first year we've had to put in something about AI?
Yes, yeah, so with that happening, again, we have and then we'll be sitting down and taking a look at kind of a policy again that we want to share, so that across the board, teachers will have that same kind of approach of how to tackle that. But in essence, we're treating it like kind of like a plagiarism thing. It can be a great resource when used accordingly, just like using the internet, but you should not be, you should be still representing your own work, your work as your own, and that's kind of how we're approaching the AI piece.
How will that be enforced? I know some of the AI checker tools aren't always reliable.
I think it's going to be enforced best by the connections that the students make with the teachers. In other words, you get to know a kid's writing, and just like with the plagiarism piece, where we can pull it off the internet a little bit easier and find that, with AI, you know a kid's voice, you start to recognize a kid's voice, and they'll be able to kind of follow up with things like that. So it's not a surefire. We don't have like you said, a system in place that would kind of, we used to have like Trinidad.com or whatever it was called. We don't have anything like that, but that connection and understanding of the kids' voices.
Can I add two things, Mike? We do have Google. We do have the Google Suite, so we have originality reports, which is sort of similar to Turnitin.com, and that does check for plagiarism. But then the other thing that teachers have actually found most useful since Google Docs has really been the technology we use for turning in papers. There's a revision history, so you can see, typing, if somebody's actually typing it. If all of a sudden there's nothing in a document and then you see a completed essay that's well-written with no revisions, that's usually a red flag that was plagiarized or AI was used, because it just doesn't occur like that. Even if you are able to overcome your writer's block, it just doesn't appear, so.
It's clever.
Okay.
Unless you find Word more efficient, you don't use Google Docs.
They do ask them to construct it in Google Docs and not to copy and paste, so it's part of the writing process. They want to see that, so.
Okay, anything else? All right, Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mrs. Click?
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes.
Mr. Sabolsky?
Yes.
All right, we have no discussion items tonight. Under board items, we have the appraisals to do for Mike and Bill, and I know you've not done that yet, so I'll be talking to you and Molly about that. We will be receiving a rubric. Will you both send that to us? So you'll get that in your email, and then we'll talk from there, and then we'll schedule a date when we can all get together and discuss. Okay? Anything else? Any other board items? All right, then could I have a motion for adjournment, please?
Second?
Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mrs. Click?
Yes.
Mr. Sabolsky?
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes. Meeting is adjourned.